I gazed into the bathroom mirror of my fresh countryside cottage, brushing aside joyful tears tracing paths along my lined face. Now 69, following 45 years wedded and 2 years grieving my spouse's passing, I'd at last treated myself to this. The modest dwelling, brimming with garden potential and views across the meadows, belonged to me, utterly to me. I'd poured in my entire nest egg of $5,000, scraped together bit by bit over years of forgoing little indulgences. Yet it paid off handsomely. For the initial time ever, I owned a spot no one could snatch away. A haven for sowing blooms, immersing in novels, and just being at ease. My fingers grazed the newly coated pale wall. I breathed in the aroma of fresh timber and sensed a thrill absent for ages. Utter liberty. That daybreak, I savored a meal in my cozy kitchen amid the melody of chirping birds. I tended the container plants purchased from the nearby settlement and envisioned spots for my cherished, swaying seat. All felt ideal. All was mine. The telephone buzzed while I sorted my sparse items in the primary sleeping area's storage. Spotting my girl Rebecca's label on the display, I grinned, assuming she'd call to celebrate my latest acquisition, though I'd been aware of her opposition to it right from the start. "Mom, that's squandering cash," she'd repeated endlessly. "You ought to remain in your flat near us." Near us, but not alongside me. Close enough to be on hand whenever they required. "Hello, my precious girl," I replied with that enduring parental warmth, undimmed by countless letdowns. "Mom, prepare yourself. In 60 minutes I'll arrive with 20 folks from David's kin," she declared, skipping any hello in that commanding tone she'd honed post-wedding. "Whip up meals for all and set up our sleeping quarters. We're crashing here for 2 weeks." Time froze. The ground seemed to shift under me. My pulse raced fiercely as if it might explode from my ribcage. 20 guests, Rebecca. I've only just settled. Nothing's set up. I lack provisions for them." "Mom, quit overreacting. They're your relatives, too. You must host them right." David mentions his relative Emily arriving with her 4 young ones, his sibling Noah plus spouse and their twin offspring, plus aunts Carol and Beth with their clans. It's holiday season and they seek a no-cost lodging. Your spot suits ideally. But Rebecca, there's no room for such a crowd. This is a compact 2-bedroom setup and no bathroom beyond the basics. We're your blood. You owe us support. Plus, why snag a spacious place if not for our benefit? Don't act greedy, Mom. We're heading out, so rush and organize it all. Oh, ensure ample fresh linens for the group. The little ones aim to splash in the pond, so pack snacks for the return journey too. Bye. She disconnected. Abruptly so. I clutched the shaking device, watching the elation from moments prior dissipate like mist. 20 intruders in my brand new abode, unannounced, without checking my capacity, desire, or resources, and most painfully treating my home like a complimentary clan inn. I scanned my tiny 2-bedroom, single-bath layout. Where could 20 crash? On the rug. In the lounge with its lone petite couch, my icebox stood nearly bare, holding just a handful of eggs, bit of dairy, and those town-bought tomatoes. How to nourish 20 souls on that? What funds for provisioning a fortnight's worth for the horde? Yet the deepest sting wasn't the unfeasible arrangements. It was grasping anew that my voice held no weight. My child had chosen for me. She'd commandeered my dwelling, schedule, funds, as though I served as her staff, not her parent. As if this abode, earned through my toil and lifelong hoard, functioned as a gratis retreat for her partner's relatives. I perched on the rim of my newly selected mattress, the one I'd picked with such care, for those serene dawns perusing pages, and that old emptiness gnawed at my gut again. It echoed each instance Rebecca and her partner invaded my former flat. They'd raid my larder, run my laundry gear, binge my screen, and depart amid chaos, deeming it utterly routine. I clearly recalled the morn post my mate's burial, when solace mattered most. Rebecca appeared bearing vacant crates and a contrived grin. "Mom, you've got excess clutter. Time to purge it all," she'd insisted, boxing my departed husband's volumes sans permission. "We'll claim these. They're useless to you. At your stage, reading's not a priority." And I, amid sorrow and disarray, permitted her to claim half my remembrances. Yes, right down to the gold watch that once belonged to my father-in-law. Back when I sold the old apartment to afford this place, she demanded I hand over the cash so she could handle the investments wisely. "Mom, finances aren't your strong suit. Let me grow that sum properly," she'd said, flashing that patronizing grin I despised. I'd turned her down, and she froze me out for an entire month. Now, on my very first day settling into my fresh home, she was already staking her claim, acting like it was her personal domain. Tears welled up and spilled over as I gazed through the window at the garden I'd longed to nurture. In just an hour, this quiet haven, this serenity, this taste of independence would shatter into utter turmoil. I stayed planted on the edge of my bed for a few long minutes, struggling to wrap my head around the mess that had unfolded. The hush of my new abode, which had felt so inviting and calm only moments before, now pressed down like a dark cloud, full of menace. Before long, this sanctuary I'd earned through endless hardship would morph into a whirlwind of noise and expectations. I rose unsteadily, the burden of my 69 years weighing heavier than usual. My knees wobbled a bit as I made my way to the kitchen, pulling open the fridge door with a blend of faint optimism and deep frustration. The truth hit harder than I'd recalled. Just 3 eggs, a half-gallon of milk, 2 tomatoes, a slab of cheese from the day prior, and a single bottle of water. That summed up my entire stock for nourishing 20 folks. With shaky fingers, I rummaged through the cupboards. A single tin of beans, 1 of tuna, a partially used sack of rice, plus salt, pepper, and a bit of oil. I lacked even basic dishware. I'd only gotten a service for 4, figuring it'd suit me fine on my own. It never crossed my mind that my daughter might convert my space into a makeshift clan shelter. I glanced at the clock. 50 minutes. 50 minutes to pull off some kind of wonder. Snatching my handbag and the car keys, I realized a trip into town for supplies was inevitable. But peeking into my wallet crushed me further. With the house payment, simple furnishings, and relocation costs behind me, a mere $300 remained until payday next month. How on earth could I stretch that to cover meals for 20 over 2 weeks? The journey to town dragged on forever. Each tick of the clock chipped away at my prep time for even the barest spread. In the modest local market, I dashed down the rows like someone on the edge, tallying every cent in my mind. Bags of rice, beans, noodles, canned tomato paste, affordable produce, loaves of bread. No luxuries, no extras, just staples to feed a crowd. The total came to $240, nearly wiping out my reserves. Back at the house, I had only 20 minutes left. 20 frantic minutes to turn my compact kitchen into a makeshift diner for a battalion. I set pots of water simmering for the rice and pasta. I cracked open tins as if driven by fury. I diced veggies while hot tears blurred my vision. No onions this time. These were drops of fury, defeat, and a gut-wrenching sorrow over the whole ordeal. While the pots bubbled, my thoughts kept circling back to how I'd ended up here. Since my husband's passing, I'd strived to be the ideal parent, the patient in-law, the ever-ready grandparent. If Rebecca required childcare, I stepped up. If she wanted a loan, I provided it. If she borrowed my vehicle because hers was under repair, I obliged. Always there, always accommodating, always agreeing. I recalled the occasion when David, my son-in-law, had barged into my previous flat with 3 buddies out of the blue, assuming I'd whip up meals and stock beverages for their entire weekend sports marathon. "Mom's away and your cooking's top-notch," he'd remarked with that insincere smirk that grated on me. And as usual, I'd bolted to the store, dipped into my funds, and slaved over their plates like a hired cook. Or the instance when Rebecca roped me into watching her sister-in-law's kids amid some supposed crisis. 3 little ones for a full 7 days, no compensation, not even a question about my availability. When I pointed out rescheduling my medical visits, she'd brushed it off. "Come on, Mom, no need for theatrics. Anyway, it'll keep you busy, so the emptiness doesn't hit so hard." Emptiness. That term reverberated as I mixed the sauce. I sensed more isolation amid my relatives than in genuine seclusion. Real aloneness rings true. It doesn't fake affection while draining you dry. The rumble of approaching engines snapped me back. Peering outside, I spotted 3 cars unloading a swarm of passengers, as if checking into a lavish getaway. Kids shrieking, grown-ups chuckling, luggage hauled from hatches, and Rebecca orchestrating it all, playing queen of my castle. "Mom," she hollered from the yard, "grab the luggage with us." I froze in the kitchen, gripping the wooden spoon I'd used for the sauce, and deep down, something snapped. Not with the flair of a film scene, but quietly and irrevocably, the way the fragile strand bearing an overwhelming burden finally breaks. I stepped out of the kitchen and swung open the front door. The sight that greeted me left me speechless. There were truly 20 individuals, ranging from infants to seniors, climbing out of the vehicles like they were pulling up to their beloved getaway spot. A few sported bathing suits already, while others hauled ice chests packed with beverages, and every single one of them gazed at me with that anticipating grin of folks expecting the red carpet treatment. "Aunt Mary," called out Emily, David's cousin, juggling a wailing infant. "What a lovely home. The children will love it here. I trust you've whipped up plenty of grub since we're starving after the drive." Noah, David's sibling, came closer, slapping my shoulder like we'd been buddies forever. "Mother-in-law, this setup is ideal for a break. Got the meal ready. The little ones skipped lunch." Naturally, they had. No one expected lunch because they figured Grandma Mary would handle it all. As usual, the dependable helper who never turns down a request. "Mom," Rebecca chimed in, drawing near with a grin that failed to light up her eyes. "I hope you've sorted the bedrooms. Emily and her crew will take the main suite since the baby fusses through the night, and we can crash in the spare. Everyone else can crash on the couches in the den." The main suite. My own space, where I'd unpacked my belongings only hours earlier, dreaming of starting each day with a view of the yard from the window. Without a word to me, without even checking in, they'd already mapped out my spot on the couch in my very own home. I scanned the crowd encroaching on my territory, handling my belongings, chatting about the place like it belonged to them, and after years of just accepting it, a new sensation stirred. Not defeat, but a genuine flicker of outrage I'd long buried, yet I had no clue how to act on it. "Mom, the food," Rebecca barked from the entrance, treating me like a server who dawdled on the order. "The kids are famished, and the grown-ups want to eat too before we unpack." I shuffled back to the kitchen in a daze, sensing the stares of those 20 pairs of eyes boring into me. On the burner, the rice had clung slightly to the pan's base. The noodles were verging on mushy, and the marinara seemed watered down from what I'd hoped. But it was all I could muster. It was the best I'd pieced together with the scant hours and cash at my disposal. I began dishing it out onto the limited platters available, aware they wouldn't stretch far. Sure enough, after filling 8, I was out. I had to make do with mugs, basins, and even a pot cover as a dish for one of the younger kids. The embarrassment peaked. "That's it?" Noah questioned, eyeing his modest helping of grains and topping. "I figured there'd be some steak or poultry, nothing more. It's just that you showed up out of nowhere, and I didn't get a chance to—" I started justifying, but David cut in. "Mary, no worries. We get that you weren't braced for a crowd, but you might have stretched a bit. We're kin, right? Plus, what a gem of a house. Bet you've stashed some funds to stock up on nicer stuff." Stashed funds. If only they realized I'd just blown nearly my entire remainder on that very spread they were picking apart. Probably not, they'd likely nitpick anyway. David's relatives possess this knack for stirring up guilt regardless of the situation. "Grandma," piped up one of Noah's twins, an 8-year-old lad. "Got any games like at my other grandparents' place?" "No, sweetie, nothing like that here," I answered in my gentlest tone. fighting to keep my irritation from spilling onto a blameless kid, and TV with all the channels plus internet. He pressed on. Not quite yet, honey. I only just settled in and haven't hooked those up. The boy stared at me like I'd confessed to dwelling in a cavern. So what's the plan for these 2 weeks? This feels dull. Emily, swapping her baby's diaper right on my dining table, chimed into the chat. Mary, could you head into town for some diapers, milk formula, and toddler meals? I underpacked for the full 2 weeks. Oh, and grab sunblock, bug spray, plus a couple extras. She passed me a scribbled note on a napkin. All jotted here. You could swing by this afternoon. I grasped the note with shaky fingers. Diapers, formula, sunblock, spray, pads, pain relievers, aspirin, heartburn tabs, kid shampoo, germ-killing soap, wash powder. It went on forever. In my head, I tallied at least another $200. My final $200. Emily, I ventured, striving for composure. I'm short on cash at the moment. I just purchased the house and... Oh, Mary, she broke in, chuckling. Come on, no need for theatrics. These are essentials. It won't ruin you. After all, it's for your loved ones. Surely you've got a rainy day fund. A crisis. They were the crisis, though not the variety I'd anticipated. Paul, one of David's uncles, came over, holding a cold beer he'd grabbed from his own cooler. Good thing, too, since I hadn't stocked up on any drinks myself. Mary, where should we stash our stuff? We gotta clear some fridge space for our brews and grub. I cracked open my tiny fridge, already packed with the basics I'd picked up that morning. Feel free to shift my items around, I suggested. Excellent, he replied, immediately yanking out my groceries to jam in his own. Now, where's the spot for Robert and me to crash? You've only got 2 bedrooms, and Rebecca mentioned that... Oh, no sweat. We'll bunk in the living room. Just ensure you've got plenty of blankets and cushions. Nights get chilly out here in the countryside. Blankets and pillows for a crowd of 20. My whole place boasted just 3 blankets and 4 pillows total. My home, now morphing into some kind of free lodging for strays. In the meantime, the kids had spotted my garden and were dashing wildly through the pots I'd so carefully selected that very morning. I gazed out as one little terror trampled my fresh tomato seedlings, which I'd set in the soil mere hours earlier, brimming with optimism and joy. Kids, watch out, I called from the window. Hey, cut them some slack, Noah yelled in response. They're just children. They gotta burn off energy and have fun. That's the whole point of heading to the country, letting them roam loose. Loose in my yard, wrecking my greenery, all while I footed the bill for their chow and played maid to this horde. Rebecca sidled up to me while I scrubbed plates in the cramped kitchen basin. Mom, we need to chat. David's relatives are thrilled to be visiting, but maybe you could put in more effort to warm them up. I spun around, suds dripping from my fingers. Put in more effort. Yeah, Mom. The meal was pretty plain, and the vibe here's kind of frosty, like you're not thrilled about our arrival. Keep in mind, this is your chance to bond with your daughter's in-laws. You ought to appreciate them choosing to hang out with you. Appreciate? That term hit me like a gut punch, echoing in my mind. Appreciate that 24 folks had barged into my space, uninvited, drained my cash, nitpicked my cooking, trashed my yard, and bossed me around like hired help. Plus, Rebecca pressed on, I trust you're not thinking of billing them for the stay. That'd come off as super cheap. Billing them. The notion hadn't crossed my mind until she brought it up, but suddenly it made sense. Anywhere else, they'd shell out at least $100 a night per room. 20 guests for 2 weeks. That added up to thousands. Yet I held my tongue. For the moment. I merely dipped my head and kept at the dishes, sensing that flicker of anger from earlier steadily building inside me. That evening, as the 20 of them dozed soundly throughout my place, I lay restless on the narrow couch in the den, ears filled with snores from every corner, eyes fixed on the shadows above, pondering just when I'd surrendered command of my own world. In the quiet gloom, the truth dawned. I'd forfeited it bit by bit. Each occasion I'd agreed when I yearned to refuse. Every instance I'd prioritized their wants over mine. All those times I'd allowed them to act like my hours, my funds, and my territory meant nothing. But after ages, a fresh insight struck me too. I could still reclaim that power. I roused at 5 a.m., my back throbbing from the lumpy couch. The morning hush endured a mere 30 seconds before pandemonium erupted. Emily's infant wailed, rousing the rest of the young ones who bolted around the house hollering and frolicking like it was a theme park. I hauled myself off the cushions, every bit of my 69 years aching in my bones, and shuffled to the kitchen for some coffee. I required that jolt to endure the day ahead. But upon entering, there was Noah, rummaging in my fridge like it was his personal stockpile. "Morning, Mary," he greeted, not glancing up. "Got the coffee handy, and we'll need milk for the children's cereal." "I haven't got any cereal," I answered, striving for calm. "What, no cereal? So what's breakfast for the little ones?" It was a fair query, but I had no solid reply. No cereal in stock. Not enough milk. Scarce supplies of every sort to nourish 20 mouths over 2 weeks. My modest cupboard suited a solo eater who kept things frugal and straightforward. "How about I whip up some scrambled eggs?" I proposed, aware I had precisely 6 left from the previous day's batch. 6 eggs for 20 folks. Noah chuckled. "Better head into town for proper provisions. Hurry it up, though. The kids will be ravenous any minute. Let's roll." As though we'd decided together, as if the cash was ours jointly, as if I hadn't just blown my final nest egg the day before on a spread they'd panned. Emily showed up in the kitchen, cradling the baby with a grumpy expression. "Mary, could you heat some water for the bottle? And I also need you to launder these clothes because the infant had a messy accident last evening," she informed me, passing over a sack stuffed with soiled garments that reeked awfully. "Didn't you pack sufficient outfits for the little one?" I inquired. "Sure, but I never imagined he'd get quite so grubby. Plus, you've got a laundry setup right here. Wouldn't it be simpler to clean them on site rather than lugging around a mountain of dirty stuff?" Simpler for her, sure, but that meant extra labor for me, plus added costs on utilities and soap from my pocket. The kids started trickling into the kitchen, resembling a ravenous pack of wolves. 5 youngsters ranging from 4 to 12 years old, each one clamoring about breakfast options, all banking on the wondrous grandma to conjure up a meal from nowhere. "Nana, my tummy's rumbling," the tiniest girl pleaded, with a face so pure it tugged at my emotions. None of this mess was her doing. "I get it, sweetie. Hang tight while I figure something out," I responded, peering into bare shelves and attempting the impossible. Then Robert App shuffled in, yawning broadly and rubbing his belly. "Mary, got any proper brew, not that quick-dissolve junk? I'm craving the real deal, quality Java." I'd barely risen from my couch after getting booted from my own mattress, and here he was demanding fancy coffee. "All I had was the instant variety," I explained to him. "For real." "Fine, then we'll head into town for authentic beans as well. And while we're at it, let's stock up on supplies for the coming stretch. There it was again, that term, like we were co-conspirators in this chaos. Rebecca descended from upstairs, where she'd lounged in my bed all night, appearing utterly refreshed. "Morning, Ma." Breakfast set yet. David's famished and hates hanging around. "Rebecca, supplies are short for everyone. We covered this before. You gotta plan better. That's 20 of us total. No room for winging it. Why not draft a solid grocery roster and hit the stores? We'll mind the place in the meantime, overseeing my home while I shelled out cash for their provisions." David trailed after her, flashing that phony grin I recognized all too well. "Mother-in-law, top of the day. Overheard you're off to town. Mind grabbing smokes and brews. Our stash won't stretch 2 weeks. Oh, and coals for tomorrow's grill out. Tobacco, alcohol, grilling fuel. The tab just kept mounting, my funds dwindling fast. David, I don't partake in either, so brands escape me. No sweat, whatever's available works. Key is having plenty to keep the vibes rolling, enjoying themselves on my dime in my space, with me playing servant. Paul wandered into the fray next. Mary, I chatted with Robert overnight, and we figured a massive cookout for the clan sounds ideal. We could rope in nearby kin, too. How's a weekend bash strike you? Extra family, I echoed, my pulse quickening. Yep, we're one tight bunch. Should be a blast. Just snag enough beef for around 30 folks. No biggie. 30 heads. Protein for 30. In my head, that tallied another $500 at minimum. Cash I flat out lacked. I can't swing that, I said. Come on, Mary, Emily cut in. Don't get cheap on us, it's family time. And hey, skipping hotel bills for the crew must be freeing up your budget for a grill party, as if crashing at my place costs zilch. Like my effort, my privacy, my sanity held zero value. By then, the young ones had raided my scant cracker boxes, munching straight from them and littering my just-scrubbed counters with bits. Hey kids, hands off that, I called out. What's the deal with those snacks, Ma? Rebecca shot back irritably. They're mere biscuits. The little ones are starving and breakfast's nowhere in sight. Allow them a bite at least. A bite. Out of my crackers. My pantry staples. My final emergency hoard. Ma, Rebecca pressed on. You're coming off a tad self-centered. This is prime for some quality kin time. Yet you're griping over trifles like snacks and cash. Not thrilled to witness our joy. Joy. They were thrilled, all right. Burning through my budget, crashing under my roof, devouring my stores, bossing me around like hired help. Naturally gleeful. I lingered in my own kitchen, encircled by 24 folks eyeing me like the antagonist because I couldn't magically sustain them gratis for a fortnight. And deep down, a switch flipped at last. No fireworks or outburst, just that satisfying snap when a long, misplaced jigsaw bit slots home. Abruptly, the full scene sharpened into focus, startling in its sharpness. These folks didn't cherish me, they relied on me. Vast gap between those notions, and I'd muddled them for ages. All right then, I announced to the group, my voice steady in a way that caught me off guard. I'll run to town for your essentials. They all beamed, content in claiming yet another victory over the compliant Nana. Yet as I grabbed my handbag and ignition fob, my thoughts weren't frail. I wasn't dwelling on groceries or shopping errands at all. My mind was elsewhere entirely, on that law office I'd spotted in town the day before, and on a crucial discussion I might finally need to start. For the first time in days, I stepped out of my home, wearing a genuine smile. That morning's drive into town felt like the freest moment I'd experienced in ages. Since my relatives showed up, this was the initial chance to be by myself with my reflections, free from constant requests, kids yelling or grown-ups acting as if I were just the hired help. The quiet inside the vehicle acted like a salve for my battered spirit. Yet I skipped the supermarket they'd anticipated, opting instead to pull up outside a cozy little coffee shop I'd noticed previously. I settled in for a proper brew, sorting through my jumbled ideas. Time was essential to absorb the insight that had dawned on me earlier. "Are you okay, miss?" inquired the server, a warm-faced lady in her 40s. "You seem a bit upset." I managed a wistful grin. "You could say I'm navigating a messy family matter." "Oh," she replied, giving a sage nod. "Family's right. They can wound us deeper than anyone else sometimes." Her remark struck me like a thunderbolt. That's precisely the truth. My closest kin were inflicting the deepest harm, and I'd grown so accustomed to the ache that it felt routine. Once I'd finished my drink, I strolled along the quaint streets until I located my target. Jeremy Stone, attorney at law. The plaque was straightforward, yet polished. Drawing in a steadying breath, I pushed through the door. "Good morning," greeted a gentleman around 50, his features gentle. "What brings you here?" "I require guidance on domestic legal issues," I stated, a touch embarrassed but resolute in pushing forward. Jeremy gestured for me to take a seat and poured me a glass of water. Over the following 60 minutes, I laid out the whole saga, from Rebecca's phone call to the takeover of my home, the mounting costs they were imposing, and the utter disregard for my belongings and funds. He absorbed it all quietly, jotting down points here and there. Mrs. Albright, he concluded, this scenario you've outlined points to monetary and psychological mistreatment. Kinship doesn't grant them license to occupy your space without consent or compel you to fund their needs. But their blood, I whispered, recycling the justification I'd clung to for so long. Real bonds honor boundaries. They don't drain them, he countered with conviction. Have you pondered enforcing legal safeguards? Legal safeguards. The notion felt both alien and empowering. Like what? For starters, your residence is solely yours. You're entitled to dictate access and terms. If they ignore your request to depart, it's essentially unlawful entry. Unlawful entry by my own people. Moreover, Jeremy pressed on, with so many treating your home like a hotel, you could bill them for accommodations, meals, shelter, utilities. Anywhere else, they'd shell out hundreds for such perks, yet you're offering it gratis. Bill them for real. I wondered aloud, a blend of optimism and dread washing over me. Absolutely, it's your domain, your assets. They arrived without invitation or financial input, so you're justified in imposing rental conditions for their presence. I exited Jeremy's practice, clutching a packet of paperwork and a fresh outlook on my predicament. We'd composed an official notice outlining rental fees for my home, charges per bedroom, per dish, per amenity, plus details on my ownership privileges and the procedures to follow if defiance arose. My subsequent destination was the bank. I aimed to pinpoint my remaining balance and the outlay from the prior 2 days. The figures were staggering. In under 48 hours, $520 had vanished from my slim reserves. Continuing that pace would wipe me out within a week. The branch supervisor, a fellow called Richard in his 30s, examined my statements with a furrowed brow. Mrs. Albright, this spending spike is way above your typical earnings. All good, he probed. I gave a quick rundown of events, and he responded with empathy. Not my place to pry, but I've witnessed this before. Seniors getting drained by family financially. Thought about capping your withdrawals. I'm warming to the idea, I admitted. If you'd like assistance curbing outflows or crafting a safeguard budget against accidental splurges, we're equipped for that. We could even tweak your account to flag transactions exceeding a threshold for approval. Yet another mechanism I'd been unaware of, a fresh shield against my well-intentioned but harmful open-handedness. At last I headed to the store but stuck to essentials this round. Rice, beans, noodles, canned tomatoes, budget-friendly produce, no indulgences, no grill meats. I shelled out precisely $50 on essentials, no booze or smokes. 3 hours later, when I got back, a barrage of gripes hit me right away. "Mom, you were gone for ages," Rebecca yelled. "The children are famished, and we're all hungry too. Where's the barbecue meat?" Paul demanded. "And the drinks," David chimed in. "Don't forget the cigarettes," Robert pressed. I stared at the whole group crammed into my living room, in my own place, waiting for me to fix their issues with my cash. But after years of this, guilt didn't wash over me. Instead, a sharp realization hit. I only grabbed staple groceries, I explained evenly. Things like rice, beans, and noodles. Plenty to keep everyone from going hungry. But where's all the stuff we wanted? Emily pushed. "I skipped those," I said plainly. The quiet that dropped was thick enough to cut. 20 pairs of eyes fixed on me like I'd gone off the rails. "What do you mean you didn't get them?" Noah questioned, stunned. "I can't afford steak for 30 folks, or brews, smokes, or the rest of your wish list. My budget covers just the basics." "Mom," Rebecca cut in with that patronizing tone I despised, "we know you've got cash stashed away. Don't be cheap." I pulled out the bank docs I'd fetched and held them up. "Here's proof from the bank. Over 2 days, I've burned through $520 from my savings. Less than $300 remains until payday. No hidden funds, no backups. This is it." The statements made the rounds, passed like courtroom exhibits. Skeptical expressions gradually shifted to irritation. "Fine, we'll figure out other ways," David concluded. "Everyone can chip in for costs." "Smart thinking," I responded, yanking another file from my purse. Actually, I consulted a lawyer today and drafted an agreement for standard fees on using my home. The hush settled in again, but heavier this time. The kind that dawns when folks grasp their target isn't helpless anymore. $100 a night per room, $50 daily per person for food, and $20 a day for utilities like power, water, and washing. I read on from the sheet. For these 2 days already, that tallies $2,800. You could have heard a feather fall. You're billing us to crash at your place, Rebecca squeaked. Not exactly, I said, mustering all my composure. I'm giving you the choice. Cover the costs for what you're using or head elsewhere for a stay. At last, after so long, I steered the talk. What erupted next was legendary. 20 voices overlapping in yells, objections, deploying every guilt trip trick they'd honed for years. Yet I felt transformed, like I'd erected a barrier their barbs couldn't pierce. "This is absurd," David bellowed. "We're blood relatives. You can't invoice us for your own roof." "How'd you turn so selfish, Mom?" Rebecca tacked on, fake sobs welling up. "Dad'd be spinning in his tomb knowing you're hitting up his kin for cash." Bringing up my departed spouse was her breaking point play, but it backfired. Far from crumbling me, it fueled me. "Your dad slaved his life away to secure my finances," I shot back steadily. He'd never stand for his relatives turning me into unpaid staff in my house. "We're not bossing you around like help," Emily argued. "We're letting you bond with kin." "Bond?" I echoed with a sour chuckle. "Emily, since you showed up, you've had me scrubbing your infants' outfits, heating formula water, and footing bills for wipes and milk. That's bonding." "But family sticks together," she held firm. "That's the point, isn't it?" I countered, my insight startling me too. True family shows respect, shares the load fairly, and doesn't milk kindness. What you're pulling is straight up taking advantage. Noah stepped closer, eyes narrowing threateningly. "Mary, you're losing it. You might need a doctor's check. This ain't the real you." "Spot on," I said coolly. "It wasn't before. The former me got trampled, blew her nest egg on ungrateful types, and mistook exploitation for affection. That version's gone." "Mom, you're humiliating us," Rebecca hollered. "What'll folks say when word gets out you're soaking your own relatives for a bed?" "The same crowd who'd judge you for barging into a 69-year-old's home unannounced and banking on her bankrolling your 2-week free ride," I fired back. Paul switched tactics. "Mary, come on, let's talk sense. We get you've got bills, but these prices are over the top. We'll toss you a token amount, $50 for the whole trip." $50, I echoed deliberately. "For 20 heads over 2 weeks. That's barely 18 cents a person daily. Ever tally the fuel to drive here, likely north of $50 a vehicle." "But that's not the same," Robert objected. "Deefa." "Why should I pay the full rent? Your cash matters more than mine, apparently. Your costs count, but mine get ignored." The room hummed with whispers and somber expressions. I noticed them exchanging glances, plotting their next move. That's when my rescuer showed up, a lady in her 60s carrying a basket of fresh produce. It was Martha, the lady from next door, stopping by to say hello to the newcomer. "Morning," she called from the doorway. "I'm Martha, right beside you, here to greet the new face around here, and whoops, looks like you've got company." "Please step inside," I replied, relieved for the distraction. She was just popping over to say hi to her kinfolk visiting. Martha stepped in and picked up on the strained vibe right away. She was the type of seasoned lady who'd witnessed enough of life's ups and downs to size up a room in no time flat. "What a crowd," she remarked with a grin, though her sharp gaze was already scanning everything. "Feeding all these folks must run you a fortune. Fingers crossed they're chipping in for the bills." The heavy quiet that dropped was telling. "They're not pitching in?" Martha queried, sounding truly taken aback. "Oh, that's a pity. Back in my time, guests always showed up with a little something or lent a hand with costs, particularly when it's a big group like this." "But we're blood," Rebecca muttered. "Well, exactly why it matters more," Martha shot back with fire. "Kinfolk ought to look out for each other above all. You know, my girl lives out in the city, and whenever she swings by with the grandkids, she hauls in a full load of supplies. She insists it's not right for me to dip into my retirement check to host her crew. I watched Martha's comments land like punches. It hit different coming from me calling them out on taking advantage versus an outsider pointing it out plain as day. "So, where'd you all hail from?" Martha pressed on with feigned casual interest. "The city," David snapped shortly. That drive must have cost a bundle. Fuel, snacks along the route, then pulling up to everything on the house. Lucky break. Though I'm guessing you folks pooled together to cover Mary's tab for the whole bunch." Each of Martha's phrases stung like a pin, jabbing at my relative's guilt, or at least their ego for getting called out by an outsider. "Martha," I cut in, "care for a cup of coffee? I'd love to chat and learn more about you." "Sure thing, but no need to fuss over me. You've got plenty on your plate with this crew already." As I fixed the coffee in the kitchen, she trailed after me. "Sweetie," she murmured low. "Not sure if I should butt in, but that bunch doesn't seem like they're here from the heart, more like they're crashing for the perks." Her insight exploded like dynamite. Finally, someone else spotted what I'd glimpsed but pushed aside for ages. That noticeable? I wondered. "Honey, I've navigated this life for 6 decades. Nothing surprises me anymore. They rolled in acting entitled to the royal treatment, while you seem wiped out and shelling out cash you can't spare." I cracked a bit then, but they're my kin. Real family doesn't take advantage, love. Real family supports their seniors. They don't drain them dry. Martha gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Let me share a secret. My sibling dealt with the exact mess from her kids. They mooched off her, bossed her around like staff, blew through her savings. Guess what she pulled off?" "What?" I pressed, clinging to hope. She drew the line, told them straight, "You come when I say, stay as long as I allow, and kick in for costs. Otherwise, book a room." Drama ensued, yelling, tears, guilt trips. But they got the message she meant business, and it stuck. These days, they drop by now and then, always with contributions, always lending a hand and showing proper regard, since they figured out a parent's love isn't up for grabs when it's twisted into a free ride. Back in the living room with the brews, the clan had been huddling and chatting. They looked like they'd hashed out a plan. David coughed to start. "Mary, we chatted it over, and we figure we could toss in a bit toward the bills. Not those crazy sums you're suggesting, just fair play." "What's fair in your book?" I probed. $200 total for our whole group's time here," Rebecca declared. Martha nearly sputtered her sip. $200 for 20 of you over 2 weeks. Kids, even the budget motel nearby wants $60 a night per room." The numbers didn't lie, and they felt the weight, but I'd locked in my stance by now. $200, I echoed deliberately, like mulling it over. Their faces lit up with hope, figuring they'd wrangled another win. For 20 mouths, 14 days, full board with meals, beds, utilities, fuel, washing, and tidying. "Precisely," Rebecca beamed, smug as could be. "See, we're being fair, capable. We're eager to pitch in." Martha gazed at me with that knowing look only seasoned women get when positive change is on the horizon. She grasped the situation perfectly. "All right," I said at last. "I'll go along with your offer." A collective breath of relief escaped the room. They figured they'd triumphed, but I pressed on, observing their expressions tighten as I laid out a single stipulation. "Given that this turns into a business deal now, I'd like you all to formalize it with a rental agreement. A contract," Noah queried, eyeing me warily. "Absolutely. When money's involved for accommodations, it's essential to outline precisely what's covered and what's not. This safeguards everybody." I pulled out the documents Jeremy had drafted and set them down on the coffee table. "Per this agreement, for $200, you'll get the right to crash on the living room floor, one simple daily meal of rice and beans, bathroom use during set times, and that's it. Just one meal a day." Emily burst out. "We were counting on 3. "Naturally, 3 meals are available," I responded with a gentle smile. though that's part of the deluxe option priced at the $2,800 I first quoted. This is ridiculous, David snapped. You're out of your mind if you expect us to agree to that. No one's forcing your signature, I assured them evenly. You could seek housing somewhere else. Honestly, that might suit all of us better. Mom, Rebecca protested loudly, you can't just evict us. We're blood relatives. I'm not evicting anyone, I countered. I'm presenting choices. Opt for the full commercial pricing on the amenities you desire, or cover the entry-level services within your means, or scout for options that match your finances more closely. Martha clapped softly. Well done. That's precisely the approach my sibling required. Straightforward choices, equitable conditions, free from manipulative pressure. Keep your nose out of it, Rebecca yelled at Martha. This involves family only. You're spot on, Martha said, rising to her feet. It does concern family, and solid families don't mistreat their seniors that way. She moved toward the exit, pausing to face me before going. Mary, should you require any support whatsoever, you know my address. And if these folks stir up trouble, reach out without a second thought. Around here, folks watch each other's backs. Once Martha departed, quiet settled over the living room. I could sense their minds racing, plotting the next move. Paul shifted to the remorse tactic. Mary, your spouse, and I shared a deep bond. He saw me as kin. Do you suppose he'd approve of you handling his relatives this way? My spouse, I shot back, instilled in me self-respect. He showed that genuine affection shines through deeds, not mere talk, and he made clear that tolerating mistreatment from others isn't affection. It's weakness. Robert opted for bullying. Mary, you seem unaware of the bind you're creating. We're a big group and you're on your own. Antagonizing the clan isn't wise. His statement might have scared me once, but it merely reinforced my certainty. These individuals didn't care for me. They depended on me. And failing to exploit my affection, they turned to intimidation. Is that a threat inside my very house? I inquired, my composure startling even me. No threat, he backpedaled swiftly. Just facing facts. The facts, I stated, include your unannounced arrival at my place, demanding gratis perks beyond your budget. The facts show you rejected my call for equal sharing, and the facts reveal that with reasonable alternatives now on the table, you're turning to coercion and bullying. Emily started sobbing theatrically, aiming to sway me. I can't fathom your newfound harshness, Mary. Our little one craves routine, yet you're casting us onto the streets. Your little one, I rejoined, requires guardians who can meet essentials without preying on a senior citizen. If a getaway's out of reach financially, perhaps skip it altogether. The kids who'd been frolicking in the yard dashed inside. Grandma, what's with all the yelling? The littlest one wondered. My heart ached slightly. The youngsters bore no fault here, yet their folks wielded them as sentimental barriers. The grown-ups are deep in discussion, I answered softly. How about heading back out to play a bit more? But our tummies are rumbling, one twin complained. Is dinner set? I scanned the adults in the room. Not a soul stirred to handle their own famished offspring. They assumed I'd step in, per usual. Folks, I announced, your kids need feeding. In the kitchen, rice and beans await your preparation. You're seriously not fixing it, Noah exclaimed in disbelief. I've handled meals the past 2 days. Your turn today, I said. But cooking isn't our thing, Emily whined. Then perhaps it's high time to pick it up, I suggested, or ferry the little ones to a local eatery. Plenty of spots nearby. David jumped to his feet. Enough's enough, Rebecca. Gather our belongings. We're out of here immediately. Where to? Rebecca fretted. We've got no bookings lined up. We'll sort it out somehow. Nothing beats staying put in this spot with the improved side of your mom. I remained in my chair, observing as they dashed around, quickly stuffing their belongings into bags. A portion of me ached at the disorder unfolding, yet a bigger chunk inside me sighed with ease. Mom, Rebecca told me once they'd gathered it all, this isn't the real you. I can't figure out what's gotten into you, but I hope you take a hard look at your actions today. You've wrecked the family just for some cash." "No," I shot back, rising to meet her gaze head on. "I've reclaimed my self-respect and figured out the line between kin who truly care for me and folks who just take advantage." "You'll be sorry," she yelled on her way out. "When you're isolated and ill, don't expect us to bail you out." "I'd rather stand solo with pride than surrounded by disrespect," I responded. They piled into their vehicles one after another. On this occasion, the kids didn't cry. They'd grasped that the trip was unlike before. No more yells or over-the-top scenes, just the defeat of those who'd lost their go-to target. I gazed as they pulled away for the final time, the second overall, and experienced a sensation absent for ages: total serenity. That evening, Martha joined me for a meal. She'd whipped up a hearty chicken stew, while I'd cooked up rice mixed with pigeon peas. We dined out on the veranda, soaking in the sun, dipping below the horizon across the meadows, chatting about ideas for our plot. "You okay with how you handled things?" she wondered. "I feel liberated," I said, voicing it aloud for the first time in ages. I feel liberated. 6 months on, my place had finally turned into a genuine sanctuary. The garden bloomed vibrantly. I'd built a modest circle of pals locally, and I'd begun art lessons down at the rec center. My routine brimmed with pursuits I picked myself, not obligations thrust upon me. Rebecca would ring now and then, always when she wanted a favor: loans, childcare, fixing an issue. I'd hear her out calmly, then say, "Sorry, dear, but that's not something I can assist with." Initially, she'd snap in frustration. Next came pleas, followed by warnings. These days, she just ends the call. I've come to see that affection for others doesn't require enduring their harm. I've realized generosity isn't about draining your own reserves for everyone else. I've discovered that real relatives support you just as you support them. And I've grasped an even bigger truth. It's never too late to seize back your existence, your honor, and your shot at joy. This morning I stirred to the melody of birds chirping, fixed my coffee in the spotless, organized kitchen, and stepped outside to tend my greenery, thriving lush and sturdy, much like myself. If my tale resonated with you, consider backing me with a super thanks to fuel more narratives like this one. Appreciate it, heaps ahead of time. And you, what choice would you make in a spot like that? I genuinely appreciate your takes, so share below in the comments. I'm always eager for your perspectives. Also, tell me where you first encountered this account, craving additional real-life tales like it. Hit like on the video and sign up for my channel. Plenty more await. Warm embraces and catch you soon.